Welcome in to Carps Corner, and excited to have you guys here with us today. Oh goodness, as always, college football never a dull moment with what's going on and what we're seeing here happen in the college game. So, a number of college issues I want to get into, take a deep dive. Some odds are out now for conference champions. I want to take a look at that. Couple of different conferences, Big Ten, SEC, probably two of the most intriguing conferences. I don't know if Clemson will make a push, but most likely I would imagine the national champion coming from one of those two. So we'll take a look at those two conferences there. NCAA putting out some new guidelines for name, image, and likeness. Sent out a big letter to everybody trying to figure out exactly how things are moving around. Also, some suggestions as far as the transfer portal, how that will ultimately look, and scholarship offering windows and how that's going to look as well, which I think this is some much needed positive movement for the NCAA. So we'll get into that. ACC is doing some different things. Their commissioner, Jim Phillips, had some words about, governance with football and with regard to that. And then also potentially elimination of divisions within conferences. Have they served their useful life? Are they on their way out now? So that's another thing that we're going to be looking at. And speaking of the ACC, there's a quarterback that was formerly from the ACC and has some unique dietary habits. And I think it's something that, maybe hurt his draft stock. I'm not sure. He slid. He was, probably supposed to be a first rounder. He's had some nice skills, but, slid a little bit. And so we'll get into that. And then obviously Tom Brady with his mega TV deal. And so we'll start right there. Tom Brady, massive TV deal that he gets, $375 million for 10 years. So when you look at Tom Brady, what's he going to be giving Fox? And this is going to pick up, obviously, the year after he's done. He's going to finish up this season. Heck, this may have been Fox doing him a solid for him coming back and playing for Tampa. Because if you look at what they were dealing with inventory-wise, Fox has the NFC package, quarterbacks in the AFC, which CBS has. You've got Josh Allen in Buffalo. You've got Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Deshaun Watson all in Cleveland. You had Russell Wilson go to Denver, move him over. Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. Justin Herbert out in Los Angeles. And then as you sit here and kind of look at the NFC, you've got the Rams and Matt Stafford, and they're defending Super Bowl champs. It's great. Not diminishing anything from them. Still doesn't draw a huge audience. Isn't going to draw a huge number. Not a lot of fan support out there in Los Angeles. Of course, you have Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. That's fantastic. They're always going to draw a big number. Cowboys, yes, that's always good. Dak Prescott, we'll see that. But they're always going to draw regardless of who the quarterback is. But really outside of Green Bay, looking at legitimate Super Bowl contenders and games that you can match up and pit with big time stars at the quarterback position may have been it as far as, and I'm not dismissing Matt Stafford at all, because I love Matt. He won a Super Bowl. He's a great player. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. He's going to have some more great years, but the Los Angeles passion just isn't what it is in a lot of other cities. And it's on the West Coast. That makes it a little tough for East Coast viewing habits. So Tom Brady coming back to Tampa Bay in the NFC, that's a big deal for the Fox package. And so you know what? Maybe they're doing him a solid a little bit there. When you get done, you know what? You can come work for us. Drew Brees did it in New Orleans, by the way. He's not there anymore. So he went to NBC last year. And so just the quarterback prestige in the NFC has diminished severely. So when Tom Brady is done playing in a year, he's going to go work for Fox. He's going to make $375 million over 10 years. That's $37.5 million a year. That is twice as much as Romo, as Aikman, as anybody else in the industry. Guys who had just set records. These dudes used to make $5-10 million. Romo upped it to 18. Now that's the going rate. And then Tom laps the field. Will Tom be good at it? I don't know. Tom works really hard at a lot of things. I don't think he has the natural charisma of a Peyton Manning. I don't think he's relatable or as funny as a Tony Romo. He's very knowledgeable. He's a really nice guy. And so I don't know if he's going to be able to be honest with his critiques, with his analysis. And that's one thing you have to be. You don't have to be cruel with it, but you have to be able to be honest. And that's a big piece of it. But the reality also what Fox is paying $375 million over 10 years for is for Tom Brady, not for him to just be on the games, but for him to give them the cachet. He will now be the biggest star on the Fox networks. He'll be the guy that when they need to raise money for marketing, for ads, he's going to be in those meetings. They've got Tom Brady. He's the biggest star, the star of stars. He has a famous wife. And so it's not just you're getting him as your lead analyst for football games on Sunday. You're getting Tom Brady to help sell your network and help with marketing and ad dollars. That's a big deal. Going into meetings, and they even talked about him being an ambassador for Fox. And so when you hear that, that starts making a lot more sense. Because Tom Brady, the brand, I think is infinitely more secure than Tom Brady as the broadcaster. Not to diminish what he could potentially do, but he's an unknown quantity at this point. Moving on. So the NCAA established some new guidelines talking about name, image, and likeness. You know, one to getting the boosters out of the game, talking about getting rid of it for recruiting inducements, trying to solve a problem there, figuring this stuff out. I don't know how they're going to enforce some of these things. It's going to be really tough to legislate. How are they going to go after the offenses? They said they're going to enforce the egregious offenses that had happened in the past because they're going to go back retroactively now prior to this announcement in May and try to go back there and pull these egregious offenders, which really just means the high profile schools that have done this really, really, really well. And so they're going to be the ones ultimately they're going to be punished. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't think it'll work well. I know this about the NCAA. They take forever to investigate things. It's not a timely manner. It's not an efficient manner. And I don't know how they're going to decide. If you look at, the legal system, if you have misdemeanors, you have felonies. There's classifications. If you rob someone for a couple $100, it's a misdemeanor. You use a gun, it's armed robbery. Much bigger deal. Large number of dollars, it's going to be, or large value, going to be a felony robbery. Steal a car, grand theft auto. I mean, you've got all these different categories where in this, they're just saying, hey, is it egregious or not? What the heck does that even mean? Who's going to be the deliberator of determining what is egregious and what's not? What are you going to go after them for? What are the penalties ultimately going to be? How are you going to force it? How are you going to determine what's a booster and a recruiting inducement versus something that's just part of doing business and getting NIL, getting an NIL deal when they get there? There's a lot of different nuances to this. There's a lot of coaches that are for it. There's people that say this needs to happen. And I'm not saying that it doesn't. I just don't know when the Supreme Court comes in and says, hey, this is how you're supposed to operate. And you're going to say, well, it's worth it to kind of take this risk because we want to make sure that we can get our game cleaned up. I get that. I understand it 100%. But also with that, you got to risk the legal aspect. When you get sued in court, people are going to be sticking it to you. Will you be able to hold up? Are you going to be able to withstand a critical eye by the court, especially when you get beaten down by the Supreme Court of the United States of America? That's a pretty darn big deal. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure it's going to go great. I don't know how long it's going to take, but for some reason, the NCAA knew this was coming for 10 years. They really knew and had an anticipation for it over the last 3 to 4 years. They'd be gotten beaten up in court, and you could see the tide of public sentiment swinging away from them and towards the player. And then this has been going on for a year. And then all of a sudden, a month and a half ago, hey, we need to do something about this. And poof, in a month, 6 weeks, you find a solution. You had all this time before to put this stuff in place. And now you can find a solution this quick when you've already let the toothpaste out of the tube. And now you want to find the solution. It's just befuddling to me. And I'm never going to understand it. I'll never understand how it works, how they did it. A couple other things though, that came out about the NCAA. I like this stuff. 2 other big important pieces that I found. Well, 3. Number 1, all schools are always going to be able to offer up to 85 scholarships, which is good. In a year where guys are transferring all around, it's really going to be really tough for roster management. And there was scholarship caps on how many guys you could bring in a specific year. And if you had too many guys leave, well, then you couldn't get to 85 because you weren't allowed to fill that many. And I understand you could have mid-years and all this different stuff, but now wiped it away. 85 scholarships is 85. Whether you want to bring in all 85 at 1 year or you bring in one in one season, you can do whatever you want with that. And I think that that's good. But two other big rules. As far as the transfer portal, I think this is big and I think this is key. You have a 5-week window after the season and then a 5-week window after spring ball to get in the transfer portal and transfer. Why is this important? Well, number one, you want to know how many scholarships you have going into signing day for colleges when, the early signing period is going to be obviously at the end of December. Maybe they change that. Then you got National Signing Day, the first Wednesday in February. Maybe they'll change that. I don't know. But 5 weeks. And it's not during the season and it's not during spring ball. And so here's what happens. You're dealing with kids that are 17, 18, 21, 22 years old. You think that you're grown up and you think that you're mature at that point in time. I thought I was. I'm still highly emotional. I'm still highly volatile. But when you're dealing with 17 to 22-year-olds, you have a bad day at practice. Things aren't going your way. A bad game, the coach yells at you. And I've seen it happen. I've watched it happen, at schools close, at schools far. Guys think the world is turning against them. You know what they do? Instead of sticking out for another couple of days, maybe another week, you hop in the transfer portal. Coach says, all right, you're done with our team. We're moving on without you. Maybe you say some things you regret. And inevitably, and I know this is happening because I've talked to coaches, a lot of these guys then want to come back to their team. And so this might give them that window, but either way, it forces you to play out the season, play out spring ball. There can be injuries. Guys can get suspended, academic issues, all kinds of stuff can happen. And so this prevents the players from being impulsive, as young people tend to be. I was impulsive when I was young. Heck, I'm still impulsive now. But what that does is it protects them from themselves a little bit. No one's bigger on individual accountability than me. But I do think these are still maturing young players, maturing young men who probably throughout points in time in their life haven't been told the truth about situations and haven't been given hard truths and criticism. And so for the first time they see that in college, it hurts. It bristles. It's like a Brillo pad to your face. It doesn't feel good. And so with that, hey, you get 5 weeks after the season to get in the transfer portal. You get 5 weeks after spring ball. And so that week 3, when you're not playing as much as you would have liked, you just don't hop in the transfer portal and be like, I'm out of here. You quit practicing with the team. And then all of a sudden, week 6 or 7, maybe the guy that was playing ahead of you or the two guys, one of them gets hurt, one of them struggling, and you would have had an opportunity to play. But you didn't because you opted to get in the portal. So this, I think, will help eliminate that. And I really, really like the move by the NCAA. I think it's smart and I think it's prudent. Other thing they did, I guess you can't be offered scholarships now until sometime in June. I think June 15th, maybe, of the summer heading into your junior year. So you play your sophomore season, you start to get out there on the camp circuit, you play really well. Going into your junior year, that's when you can be offered. That's when I was offered by Ohio State, Northwestern, Miami, Ohio. Those were my first offers coming in. And so as I looked at that, that made sense. Going into your junior year, you've got some film, you played a little bit, and none of this nonsense. Now, I feel like Lane Kiffin really kind of got it going. He was at, Tennessee trying to create some buzz, offering, 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, hey, come here. Is it a committable offer? Like if the kid wanted to commit, are you going to hold a spot for him for all that time? No, you're not. You're not going to hold a spot for him. And so why throw it out there for publicity? And so this will eliminate that. And so it may be symbolic in nature, but I do think that it's something that's very important. And I think that it's critical. And I think that it needed to happen. So put some guardrails around that. And this is good for the NCAA. They're getting beat up about name, image, and likeness. You're getting beat up about the transfer portal and how you're supposed to handle all this stuff. They were backed up in the shadow of their own end zone. You sometimes you don't need a Hail Mary to go score a touchdown. You just need, 5 or 6 yards, 4 yards on first down to keep yourself on track to feel like you can get that next first down. And I think that's what this was with the NCAA. Putting in the 85 scholarships, you can max that out every year. You don't have limits on per year, which you can sign. 5-week transfer window before after the season and after spring ball, and then not offering players until the summer heading into your junior year. That feels like small wins that a lot of people can agree on and a lot of people can get going. So I like that. I think that works. I like where they're at with that. And I think it's going to be really, really good. And hopefully they'll be able to start getting some of the other stuff going. I want to go to odds real quick. Talk about that. SEC, Big Ten. I think the national champion is coming from one of those two conferences. Got a couple of choices in the SEC. The Big Ten, probably just Ohio State. So we'll start with the Big Ten. Odds to win the Big Ten championship. We'll throw them up here. And you can see this. Ohio State, prohibitive favorite, minus 170. That's big time ball. And here's not just the fact that they're minus 170, so you have to bet $170 to win $100. Whereas your next closest team is Penn State, and they're plus 800. Betting 100 wins you 8. Wisconsin betting 100 wins you 900. Michigan 1,000. Iowa 1,200. And then it drops pretty significantly to Indiana and Minnesota, and then ultimately Nebraska. And those are people that you look at that say, hey, they maybe have a chance to get it done. But Ohio State, far and away the prohibitive favorite to win the Big Ten. So now let's take a look at the SEC. So we throw the odds up there. Got the usual suspects at top. You got Bama minus 160, which, makes a lot of sense. And then you've got Georgia plus 200. All right. So you got a little clustering up there. And then I look at this like I look at in the Big Ten. Where is the drop? You've got the Georgia Bulldogs now dropping the Texas A&M Aggies rather behind Georgia, dropping all the way to plus 1,200. And so that's a pretty steep drop between that upper crest of Alabama and Georgia, then to the next group, which is going to be A&M at plus 1,200, Florida at plus 1,600, and then you drop again significantly to LSU and Ole Miss and Auburn at 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. So you look at that, there's basically what they're saying. There's 3 elite teams in the Big Ten and SEC this season: Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia. Georgia lost a lot, but Kirby Smart's recruited really well there. They have their quarterback coming back. I know Stetson Bennett isn't the best in the world, but they still have a returning quarterback, and I think that ultimately bodes well for them. Gosh, we got a lot to get to today. ACC, they're doing something here, and they've been kicking it around. The Big Ten has talked about it. The SEC is going to have to do something about it because they're going to 16 teams soon. But they're talking about eliminating divisions. And part of the reason, talking to my good buddy Jacob Hester about this, like, I don't think Georgia's ever been to A&M since they've been in the Big 12. Like, there's schools that haven't been to Missouri. Missouri hadn't been there. Like, you have so many schools that it's really tough, and they go 10, 12 years without ever getting to play there. I think Hester told me LSU hadn't been to Lexington, Kentucky since like 2007 or 2008. And that's crazy to me. I understand you've got divisions, but on the other side, you know what? Like, you get to college over a 4-year period, you should be able to play in every stadium in your conference. I understand you're going to have rivalries built in and a lot of different things. This gets me wondering, like, I think it was 1992. I want to say 91 or 92, first SEC championship game. Bama and Florida. Bama wins it. They go on to win a national championship. And you ask yourself, it's been 30 years basically since the conference championship games have kind of become in vogue. And everyone loves it because you get an extra game. It's against 2 elite teams, and TV deals are going to eat it up. You can make a ton of cash on it. But have divisions outlived their useful life? That's the real question that I think we're getting to, trying to find the genesis of that. Like, because it seems like they have. You look at the SEC West, it's loaded down. Big Ten East, it's loaded down. and you have this asymmetry within conferences, and I understand there's a cyclical nature of it, but almost what the Big 12 is doing, where, you figure out some sort of round robin, you rotate some teams on and off every 2 or 3 years, you lock in a couple of rivalries, and that may be the way to go. I think divisions are probably on their way out, and the ACC is looking to eliminate them by as early as 2023. So this could be the last season with divisions in the ACC. I wouldn't surprise me to see the SEC follow suit, and ultimately the Big Ten follow that as well. One other thing the ACC is getting into, and their commissioner, Jim Phillips, former athletic director at Northwestern, pretty sharp guy. And, he had some interesting comments about the NCAA and governance of football. Now, remember, Gene Smith came out, the Ohio State athletic director, came out and said some stuff about this, a week ago. And so he addressed it, on a couple episodes back, how Gene Smith's very measured. Make no mistake about it. Jim Phillips and Gene Smith, I would probably say, talked about this, and they discussed it, and they're throwing these things out there, just lobbing them so that people in the media aren't stunned when it ultimately happens, and making sure that there's no outrage and that, fans aren't losing it, TV partners aren't losing it, everything else is crazy. But we'll throw this up here on the screen. This is what Jim Phillips said, AD or commissioner of the ACC. So what are you doing with the sport of football? Does it need to be managed separately? Do you need to have a governance structure? Those are questions we should be asking ourselves. And when I say the sport of football, I'm really talking about the 10 FBS conferences in Notre Dame. Those are the conferences that have said we are committed to this type of resourcing. Some do it less, but a minimum of 85 scholarships, and then everybody else decides how much more they want to do, whether it's in their stadium or resources or salaries or those kinds of commitments. And that's what I want to do. And I think that's what we're going to do collaboratively. We want to do it collaboratively with the other conference commissioners to just kind of explore what we should do. And we have had some of those conversations already, but we need to have more of those conversations as we need to look at the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months about the sport of football. So Jim Phillips is saying it right there. Over the next year, people thought it was going to be the Power Five, but I think everyone wants to kind of move in lockstep with this. And they want to make sure they're doing right by everyone and keep a lot of the structure and say, hey, everybody's committed to 85 scholarships. If you want to do more, you can have more coaches. You can do more things like that, more people on the field. We'll figure out name, image, and likeness and all those things. But if you're going to commit to 85 scholarships, we'll still all play each other and it'll still all be good. But we're going to have our own governance now. We're not going to be under the guidelines of the NCAA. Maybe for academics, we'll keep some of that, but we don't need them to enforce stuff. We don't need them to be a part of it. And the reality is they don't control the championship. And so they really can't control eligibility when it comes to players. And so we're going to go do our own thing. You heard Gene Smith say it last week. Now Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner, is saying it. I think you're going to probably hear a lot of that echoed by Greg Sankey by Sankey here soon. Kliakov, Pac-12. I mean, all these commissioners are going to start saying these things, and you're going to probably start seeing this move in motion. Probably as the college football playoff gets renegotiated, they'll have a system in place ultimately for that. And then finally, want to close with this. Sam Howell, former quarterback in North Carolina, drafted by the Washington Commanders, a little lower than he thought, slipped out of the first round, into the second day, and slipped down there a little bit, and came out. And I don't know if this is something that impacted his draft status or not. I'm inclined to believe that it really didn't, but I'm just amazed that a quarterback would come out and say this. And he talks about how he's never eaten red meat, not burgers, not steaks, not anything. He's a chicken guy. Talked about eating chicken tenders. Throw up a tweet, with regard to that. But not a vegetarian, as it says, but he's someone that just doesn't eat meat. Goes to a steakhouse, ordering chicken. I'm not sure how you can be a quarterback now in college football like that, or especially in the NFL. Go at these big steak dinners. I know a lot of guys that I would say don't eat a lot of red meat, don't eat a lot of beef, but saying like, I'm mostly a chicken guy. And then I think he alluded to the fact that it's mostly chicken tenders. That's crazy town. It's crazy town. So there are guys that are vegans, and that's a little different. But I think the sports world was in a little bit of a tizzy about that, just kind of seeing ultimately what was happening, what was going on, and just kind of surprised to see that ultimately transpire. So that ends this edition of Carps Corner. As always, subscribe, like, share, comment. If you have any questions, things you want me to answer, questions you want me to answer, I appreciate it. Throw them out there. I'll get them all taken care of for you. I'll continue to try to make this better. I've got some guests lined up over the next couple of weeks that we'll get rolling through here from college and the NFL. There's some players, some members of the media. So we'll do that. And you won't just have to listen to me gab the entire time. But thank you for tuning in, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.